What's up, guys? Welcome back to the next video in learning Java. My name is Curious Dani and you guys are watching my channel Wood. Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about var args. So sounds very strange if you guys haven't heard this term before. We are talking about variable arguments, but in Java they shorten this variable arguments and they call it var args. Alright, so before we discuss var args, we guys go ahead and create a class. You guys can create any class. I'm going to create var args according to the topic of this video. Alright, so we have created a class called var args, and the class already created. So I'm gonna put it here. So now I'm gonna put a it's called var args. So we put a var. Or you guys can put it this, or some folks they put a var args, they can put it like this, but at the end of the day it's variable arguments. Alright, so why do we need variable arguments? So the var args allows the method to accept 0 or multiple arguments. So before var args in Java, either we used to overload method or take an array as a method parameter, and it has many flaws and many bugs. So later on then the Java decided to create something called the var args, our variable length arguments. So Java shortened it for like a var args. So at the var arg, it lets us declare a method, our constructor, which I'm going to discuss in next few videos about constructors, what constructor is. But so far we know what method is, and this method that accepts a variable number of arguments or parameters inside this method. And keep in mind that the number of arguments that the method accepts in this parameter is called arity, A-R-I-T-Y. So A-R-I-T-Y. And a method that accepts a variable length argument is called variable arity method. So it's called variable arity method. So here I've got a typo. So for example, if our method, so I'll repeat again, a method that accepts a variable length argument is called variable arity method, or in simple term, var args method. So how do we declare var arg method? Say for example you have a method and we put a void or something here. Say for example if we have a string and we have a static string. For example, I'm going to put a static string method. Say for example our method is going to be xyz, for example. So our method is going to be xyz. Our in other words, our method is going to be like foo, for example. And now, how do we put a variable length arguments? We're going to put a data type here. So this part is going to be data type, and we put a 3 dot, and we put a name here, variable name, whatever name you guys chose to do. So here, for example, that's your method, and here we need to put a data type, string, int, whatever, double, float, whatever you guys want to put. And here you guys need to put 3 dots, and you guys can put a, say for example, name. Alright, so why do we need this one? Say for example, if you guys have a, say for example, parameter, or if you guys don't know your arguments, this is the best way. Say for example you guys working for a company, hospital or something, and you guys making patient wards, whatever. So that there is a few arguments you guys know, for example patient's first name, last name, date of birth, whatever, but you guys don't know a lot of other medical terms. For example, say blood type, or red blood cells or white blood cells, and blah blah blah. So you guys use this one. Say for example, then later on you guys can edit here. Say for example now patients come in, for example, so I'm gonna put it here. Say we put a patient's name. We have already a lot of methods. Say for example we have a name already, we have age, we have a city, for example address, but we don't know a lot of other, say for example blood type, we don't know. our we don't know about white cells, white blood cells, for example. We don't know this term, but what happens here now, that later on if you guys want to add here inside your parameter, then Java is going to used to give you guys a very hard time. But with Java improved a lot, so Java created this method of variable length, our var args method, our, in another word, variable is called single L arity method. That's a technical word for this one, because it accepts a variable length of our arguments. Okay, so now I'm gonna remove all, so I'm gonna leave the var args here, and we're gonna create some say for example variable length arguments method. Say for example we put a static, and we put a void, and we put a patient, for example. But as I said before, we have this method, but we don't know a lot about our patients. Say for example, now we're going to put a string, which is our data type, and we put a patients, for example, info. That's our name. So through this one we can put our arguments. So now we have a parameter. If you guys for example coming from other languages, say for example we put a static void, and we put a patient, our we put a foo, okay. So in order for us to say the name, we put a, for example, a string name, our int, for example, age, our we put a string, for example we put a string address. So we have we're gonna put a lot of data types and name. It's gonna be, say, now we're gonna get to the end, and still, for example, if tomorrow we're gonna make this method for a hospital or for a clinic, what happens if we need another another parameter here, our arguments? What happens with there are a lot of medical terms that the programmer is not aware of. So what happens if tomorrow medical is going to do, for example, X-ray as well? So for string imaging, for example, what are we going to do? Because X-ray or ultrasound, our we put a string ultrasound results, for example, our test result or whatever. So to avoid this headache, Java has introduced this one. So you just put a string, your data type, put 3 dot here, and just put info, whatever name. This info is just a name. The reason I put it because we want patients, for example, information. So now we're going to put a system out print line, print ln. Say we put a patients information, or for example we just put a our this is coming from the patient's information. So patient's info or patient's method. So I'm going to put a patient's coming. This is coming from patient's method. This is coming from patient's method. Okay. So now we know that this is coming from the patient's method, and now we're going to display this one. All right. So now we put our main method here. Say I'm going to put on top, for example, we put a public. We're going to have another static method, public static void main. Okay, so now our main is going to have a array of strings of arguments, and here we're going to have this patient method here. So we put a patients here. Okay, we just are calling this method, but we are not going to do anything on this method. We are not going to do, even though we have variable length arguments here. We are not going to pass any arguments here because that's a parameter, but we are not going to do anything. So what we're going to do is that we're going to save, and where it says run, we're gonna do run, and we're gonna look at the var args, and we're gonna see what happens with our method that we are calling. Alright, so now we're gonna check our program. So this is coming from patient's method. Patient's informations are, so this is coming now. We have successfully calling our method, and keep in mind we are not giving any arguments here. So I'm going to put a G here. Okay, so now what if I want some arguments? For example, now I have a patient, and I look here, I'm putting here, I'm getting this whatever I put in here in this static method. What happens if I want some information? For example, now I'm going to put a system out print ln, and I'm going to put a line to distinguish between this patient. I'm going to call this patients again, so I'm going to put it here. And now looking here, there is a faint info. Where is this info is coming from? This is the guy XYZ. You can put XYZ, you can put a string. So now it's gonna ready to accept the argument. Say for example we put a John. That's our argument. We're gonna save, and we're gonna run. And if you look in here, we're calling both, but we don't see our arguments here. Okay, so in order for us to see our argument, we have to run a for loop. Okay, so how do we gonna run a for loop? Now we're gonna come underneath this one, and we're gonna put some for loop here. So we say here we put a for loop, we put a for, and for we put a string, because that's our data type is string, and string s, and what's the name of here is info. So here we put an info, that's our for loop, and we put a system dot out dot print ln, and we put this s for string. Our we can put str, for example, we put str, and you guys need to update this guy as well. And once this one's done, then we're going to see John here. So because now we put a for loop to run through our here variable length arguments here, our in simple word var args. So you're going to see here that we can see the name here now. Alright, so how about I put another one? For example, if I put Azad, for example, so I'm going to put Azad, and I'm going to put a Michael, for example. I'm going to put a, say for example, you can put your friends and family, whatever you guys like. You can put a Joe Biden, for example. Alright, so now we're going to run, because now we have a lot of arguments. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. So as you can see here, that it accepts all our arguments here. And keep in mind, we have only put a string, and put a 3 dot, and we put an info. Alright, so now how about if we instead of this info, we pass a string of variable length argument. We're going to pass, for example, integer. So we can do so. We can put a, I'm going to put an int. We put a ward number, for example, in our ward. This patient is staying in this ward. So now we have 2 instead of 1. So we're going to put the int. We're going to put a string here, 3 lines, and we put an info. So this info is the name for this guy, and this word is int. So we're going to put this one here underneath, and we're going to put another one here, the ward number for the patients. The patients are the ward for patients, or if you don't understand the ward is where they locate the patients plus we put a word. Okay, now we are using through this one, we are using the top guy here. So now if you look in here, we have a problem here. So now we are using 2 instead of 1, because here you guys look in here, it used to be string, here now it's an integer. So what we're gonna do here, we can put for example, now if I put on top, if I put a word number, for example 20, and the word number 20 is, for example, Donald Trump. Okay, so if I fix it here, I put 2 here. So how about here? I'm going to put 3 here, the patients here, or for example, it's 500. The word is 500, and if you guys look in here, my error is gone away. You guys need to put 2 here now, because now our you can put as many as you guys like here. You can if you guys add, for example, 1 more, and we can put a quadrat, for example, at the end. It's still okay, still accepts this one, because it's a variable length arguments here. Okay, so now if we save all, and if you try to run our program, and we're going to see here, this is coming from patient method, patient's informations are, and keep in mind we're looking on top. Here the first one's calling the top one here, this one here, this is calling this method, because the first one is here. When we call here, it calls whatever here, the first one, then it calls this one, then it calls this one. Okay, so here this is coming from the patient's method, patient's information are, and the word number are number for patients are 20, and the patient's Donald Trump, and this is the word, and here we have put Azad, Michael, Joe Biden, quadrant. That's how many arguments you guys pass here with the variable length arguments. So this is a variable length arguments in Java. If you guys observe here, we can pass as many arguments as you like, but in normal programming you cannot do this. It's impossible, because if you put a string, 1 string for name, then the arguments you guys need to put 1 string, only 1. You cannot put 2 or 3 or 4. Now here, because we are doing programming, but we don't know ahead of time how many times do we need arguments. It can be anything, it can be any string. I just put example of names. You can put anything. You can put age, you can put a first name, last name, friend's name, ex-friend's name, partner name, this name, that name. You can put an address, whatever a string you can come in, it comes in your mind, you can put it here. And whatever the integer or float, double, whatever comes in your mind, you can put it here. It still accepts. The main point is that you guys are having parameter here, and here your parameters are now variable length arguments, and now here you have argument. Keep in mind the arguments always go with positional. It's called positional arguments. If you put an int here, you guys need to put it int here. If you put an int and here at the end, you guys need to put int at the end. No problem. You can change. So for example, string info, you can put it this side, and you can put this side. You can swap the place, and make sure you change this one at the same time. So this is the variable length arguments, our var args in Java. That's how we gonna pass our arguments here, and we don't know, and the variable length argument inside Java in you guys, when you guys doing programming, and you don't know how many arguments do you need for your method, for example. So now I have int word, all I'm aware as I needed 2 here, but here I needed like I need 1 int, and I have 1 2 3 1 2 3 and 4. I have 4 patients, and here I have 1 patient. So that's how the Java is very sophisticated and powerful, and let us do very powerful programming and very easy programming. Solves very big problems down the track. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. If you guys have any question or comment, leave in comment box. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video, and bye.